Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're heading to Punjab, known as India's breadbasket, to dig into a really controversial new policy. It's pitting the promise of modern cities against the deep-seated fears of the very farmers who feed the nation. You know, on paper, this policy sounds like a total win-win. But in reality, it's kicked off a massive firestorm of protest. So what is really going on here? Why would farmers be out on the streets rejecting a plan that says it'll make them partners in their own future? To figure that out, we've got to look a lot closer. All right, so before we dive into the whole controversy, we really need to get a handle on the idea itself. What exactly is land pooling, and why is the government pushing it so hard as the future of urban development? Okay, so at its heart, land pooling is supposed to be about teamwork, not force. Instead of the government just buying up farmland, landowners are meant to voluntarily pool their plots together. Then a development authority steps in, builds all the modern stuff, roads, plumbing, electricity, and creates a planned city area. Here's the key part. The original landowners then get a piece of that brand new, much more valuable developed land back. You can see how this is a huge shift from how things used to be done. The old way was often compulsory. The government could just decide to take your land, pay you a fixed price, and that was it. You were out of the picture. Land pooling is meant to flip that script entirely. The farmer goes from being a one-time seller to a long-term stakeholder. Instead of a single cash payout, you get back an asset, a developed plot that could be worth a whole lot more down the line.
So you've got this model that sounds great, promising partnership and shared wealth, but for the farmers of Punjab, it also feels like a massive gamble with incredibly high stakes. Let's break down both sides of this coin. The promise is really tempting. You can see the appeal. Supporters of the policy see it as a brilliant way to make farmers genuine partners in progress. They wouldn't just get one lump sum, they could have multiple streams of income, maybe by selling or renting out their new high-value plots. And for the government, it means they can build well-planned cities without having to spend a ton of cash up front. On paper, everybody wins. But then you flip the coin, and the risks, well, they're huge, and they're rooted in history and real hardship. You have to understand, for these farmers, land isn't just a business asset. It's their entire way of life. It's their family's heritage. There's a massive trust deficit built on years of past projects that promised the world, then stalled, leaving people with nothing. There's also a real fear that this policy is just a clever loophole, a way to get around the protections of India's major 2013 Land Acquisition Act. And here's a huge point. The model pretty much ignores small farmers who can't afford to wait years for a return, and it completely leaves out the landless laborers and tenant farmers who depend on that land for work. And the scale of this thing is just mind-boggling. We are talking about over 60,000 acres. When you hear a number that big, it forces you to ask a tough question. Is this really about a genuine need for housing? Or is something else going on here? Something more like massive real estate speculation. Now look, this isn't just some academic debate happening in government offices. The opposition is real, it's organized, and it is happening right now on the ground. Let's take a look at what that resistance actually looks like across Punjab. And we're not talking about a few scattered protests here and there. This is a coordinated, widespread movement. You've got farmers holding 24/7 sit-ins in Ludhiana. In Hoshiarpur, they're literally putting up signs at village entrances saying officials aren't welcome. You're seeing huge tractor marches in Amritsar and highway rallies down in Bathinda and Mansa. The message is being sent, and it's being sent loud and clear. And it all comes together under this one powerful, unifying cry, Zameen Bachao, Punjab Bachao. Save the land, save Punjab. This shows you, right? It's become about so much more than just individual plots of land. For the people protesting, this is a fight for the very soul and future of their state. All of this forces us to zoom out and look at a much bigger picture, one that really goes beyond just the farmers and affects the future of the entire country. This policy is creating a direct showdown between two very different visions for what Punjab should be. And it all boils down to a really fundamental question. Does the state known as India's breadbasket, the place that feeds millions, really need to convert its most fertile land into massive new cities?
What is the real trade-off here between our food security and this push for urban sprawl? The risks are, well, they're existential. First off, paving over some of the most productive farmland in the country could be a direct threat to food security. On top of that, this kind of massive development would almost certainly make Punjab's existing environmental crises, like its dangerously low groundwater levels, even worse. So critics are asking, why not try something else? Instead of building huge new townships from scratch, why not focus on strengthening the towns we already have? Why not promote growth with things like agro-industrial clusters that actually play to Punjab's strengths instead of destroying them? So, with the two sides so far apart and the stakes so incredibly high, is there any path forward? Is there a way to find some common ground and begin to rebuild the trust that's been so completely shattered? A path forward might just exist, but it absolutely has to start with rebuilding trust. Some experts have laid out a few key steps. First, you have to create independent tribunals so that when disputes happen, there's a fair process. Second, you have to mandate serious social and environmental audits at every single stage. Third, and this is so important, the contracts need to be rewritten to actually include and benefit the landless workers, not just the landowners. And finally, start small. Don't jump straight to mega townships. Run smaller pilot projects, prove the concept works, build some confidence, and then you can talk about scaling up. In the end, this whole controversy in Punjab brings us face to face with a dilemma that's as old as time. When the push for progress slams right into a community's heritage and way of life, it leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? What is the true cost of the future? And more importantly, who's being asked to pay the price?